Hello, everyone, and welcome to Team Bonfire's final presentation. My name is Andrew, and I'd like to introduce you to the fellow teammates in this group. We have Leah Moore, Caitlin Schwartzentruber, and Austin Despain. Before we begin, we just wanted to go around and share each one of us a little bit about ourselves. So my name, as I said before, is Andrew. I work as an international worker in Asia with a unreached people group that I can't tell you about. And we've spent time all over Asia over the last 10 to 15 years working on reaching minority people groups. I'm currently engaged in finishing my degree focused on linguistics. I love languages. And one of these days I'll get around to learning one of them fluently, but for now I just keep picking up one after the other. So enough about me. Austin, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, hello, my name is Austin Despain. I am from a town in Texas called Canyon, Texas, which is in the Panhandle. Born and raised here. My major here at Johnson is ministry leadership. I'm planning on graduate after next semester, which is December of 2021. In my free time, I like to ride mountain bikes and run, and I play bass for my worship team.
So. Awesome. Thanks, Austin. Caitlin, how about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Caitlin Schwartzentruber. I am a youth pastor in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now, and I am finishing up a degree in ministry leadership, and I'll be finishing at the end of summer of 2021.
Great. And finally, Leah, what about yourself?
I am Moore. I'm from the big town of Chocowinity in Eastern North Carolina. I have 3 wonderful kids, ages 5, 8, and 16. I have 6 cats, 2 dogs, and 17 chickens. So I'm always feeding or cleaning up after somebody. Studying ministry leadership. I'll graduate next May, and I sing and play piano in my worship band.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So the case selection that we're going to be looking into today is dealing with the potential water treatment facility in Butler, Ohio. And so we've broken this down, covering many different aspects and approaches. And so Austin Despain is going to lead us off, firstly by just talking about the thesis and the ethical statements. So take it away, sir.
Awesome. So for our case, we chose to do Whose Water, which is all about a little town called Butler, a lake called Simry Lake, which is part of a river, and how that water is getting distributed to the town. How we're doing that, we're looking at how the town of Butler can provide a treatment system and a bottling plant and still have money and still have clean water while still preserving all of the species in the local area. So there's kind of a lot that goes into it. So if we could go back to our thesis, just to kind of read over that real fast. To ensure that the bottling company will be responsible in their use of the local natural resources, the following steps must be taken before the project is approved. The town must set a prescribed limit on how much water the company is allowed to remove from the lake. Ensure that the factory will not contaminate the current watershed with drainage pollution, and create accountability for the water use and cleanliness. This will guarantee that the future generations of Butler can enjoy having a safe and unsullied place to live for years to come. So we can go ahead and start breaking down our case. The case is called Whose Water. It's a town of Butler with about 5,000 people. They're part of a county which has about 15,000 people. And the county all gets water from the Licking River, and the town of Butler gets their water from Simry Lake. Simry Lake in the past, their treatment facility in the town of Butler has not provided the town of Butler with very clean water. It has been usable, but it has not been ideal, the water conditions. So part of this case study is trying to decide if, when, how the town of Butler wants to provide a treatment facility to provide clean water for the area. The town has been cited by the Environmental Protection Agency in the past for their cleanliness of their water. It has not been the cleanest again, but it has been usable. So they're kind of straddling the line of good to not good. So then a bottling company comes along and they provide an offer to the county. They provide a no interest loan to the county to build the treatment facility, which was up to EPA standards, up to clean water standards. The offer also includes buying land for a bottling plant, which is adjacent to the treatment facility, so that the bottling plant can operate. The bottling company will offer jobs for local residents. It is like the time frame is coming right off of the 2008 recession. So everyone in the area is struggling economically, financially. So this bottling company and the treatment facility will provide construction jobs and just regular 8 to 5 jobs for locals. But the bottling company does not include any kind of restriction on water uses from Simmery Lake. It does not include any kind of environmental protection, and it does not include any kind of cost effectiveness for low income customers, which in our case study, a big issue for some people was that they're struggling pretty hard financially, and they're looking to provide some kind of discounted water for them just because of their low income. So then we get into the ethics behind all of this too. What's challenging about these ethical issues is that we want to keep, we want to not affect the situation anymore at all. Like we want to keep 100% effectiveness for as long as we can in this situation. But unfortunately, because of the situation, just because of how ethics works, what makes it challenging is some of these aspects are going to be negatively affected. So the ethical dilemma comes trying to decide to what extent some of these are going to be negatively affected. So the first one, the cleanliness of water for Butler and the surrounding area. The goal is to avoid sickness while providing plenty of clean water to local residents. That's just something that needs to happen. As Andrew will talk about, there is disease that comes with uncleanliness of water. We also want to worry about the health and the existence of the native species. The environmentalists of Butler, they stand for minimal changes or no changes to water levels. They want to protect the local species, and they want to waste as little water as possible. So health and existence of native species and the local ecosystems is important in this too. We're also focusing on long-term effects of water levels. In the case, there was a fact thrown out, 40% of current clean water of Butler is wasted before it gets used. That is just really by leaks in the, transportation of the clean water to where it needs to go. 40% is wasted. So a quick solution offered by the main character of the case study. There is another statistic following that. It will cost the same amount to build new pipelines as it would be to build a new treatment facility for the area. So to fix both of it would be very, very expensive. And to have a new pipeline would cost the same amount as building a new treatment facility, which is what we'll look at. Big ethical dilemma there. And from a psychological perspective, which is what I've had this entire class, there is accountability that should come on behalf of the bottling company, as we're going to look at later, as Leah is going to present. From a psychological perspective, it's ethically more effective, more efficient for more people whenever there is accountability at hand. So there should be some kind of accountability on behalf of the bottling company to ensure that the long-term effects of the water levels will not be changed drastically. Another ethical dilemma is the support of the local economy. Both facilities will provide jobs for local residents, but the plant operates in the red with other ethical issues. So because there is no current restriction on the bottling plant, something does need to happen, something needs to change, which is where we come in, thus the rest of the presentation. So Andrew, take it away.
Thank you very much, Austin. And so as he just laid out very well, there's a lot at stake here, and not just in one area, but in several. So the first one I want to discuss is the employment aspect. As Austin mentioned, a stable and successful job is critical, and bottled water is a very lucrative business. It's a water pun for you. But in 2020, 15 billion gallons of bottled water was sold just in the United States. We're not talking Aquafina bottles, we're talking about gallons. So that is a lot of water. In the past 10 years, the volume of the country's bottled water sales has increased considerably every consecutive year. So we understand that there's a big market for this, and it will continue to expand. And so it's a viable business model. And so this company could not only employ people to get up off the ground, but it could potentially employ more people in the future. So employment is everything to a community, especially when you're in a small town. And since a sizable percent of the community is unemployed, we know that it's not just about pay. A lot of people in the case study were dealing with issues where their COBRA coverage was running out. They did not have health care. They didn't have vacation time. They didn't have these other benefits. And so when you're working for a corporation, you can have these. And so it just improves the quality of life throughout the whole community. And it just breeds a cycle of more prosperity. When more people have jobs, more people have money. When more people have money, they can spend it, and it goes into the local economy, these local businesses and restaurants and facilities. It all trickles down and enriches everybody, not just the people that work at the bottling plant. But that's not the only thing we need to take into account here. There's a lot more at stake. We need to look at the environmental impact, and we need to ask the questions: if we take a large quantity of water from the lake and the river, is this going to affect the local ecosystems? We don't know how much water is going to be needed by this company. They've given an estimate, but what if it's more in the future? What if there's no cap we can put on this? Is our lake going to drain away? And a lot of people would say, oh, there's no way that could possibly happen. But if we look at the historical record and past events, we can see that stuff like that can happen if there's no oversight and people are just thinking that they have an unlimited supply. Probably one of the most classic and well-known examples is what happened in the former Soviet Union. In the 1950s, the Soviet government saw these rivers. One was the Amu Darya, and it had a massive amount of water, and it was just pouring through the Fergana Valley, and then it emptied into the Aral Sea. And they thought, well, there's not a lot of rainfall here, but we get a lot of water from these mountains when ice melts. And so we can start diverting it for irrigation. Just take the water, and then we can run it through these pipes and aqueducts and water the fields and crops. But what started to happen was the Aral Sea began to dry up and evaporate. And in the Kazakh language, Aral means islands. And so as you can see from a satellite photo back in the late 80s, it's a beautiful inland sea or lake full of islands. And then you compare it to 2014, over 90% of it is gone. And you're just left with this massive basin of salt and sand, and other whatever chemicals were in the water have just been left behind after the evaporation. And so now it's it's a massive environmental catastrophe. Not only were all the businesses based around the lake gone and all the settlements, ships are stranded in the middle of this desert. Sandstorms sweep up and spread toxic dust all across Central Asia. And you see that tens of thousands of people are afflicted with these respiratory illnesses and other diseases. So ecologically, it's just been absolutely devastating to the entire region. And there's really no fix for it now because the water is gone and people need it to live. And not only the people, but many species of fish and wildlife went extinct that were unique to this area because there's just nothing left to support them. So this is a big thing at stake here that we're looking at. And from this and other smaller examples, we see that it is possible to irrevocably destroy an ecosystem. And so if this can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And so we need to balance all these things together. We need to take steps to ensure that the local resources will be used wisely. Not that we don't use them or utilize them at all, but we need to look at this and say, okay, what is too much and what is going to destroy and affect everything else? The Haudenosaunee are a group of people that are indigenous native to northeastern North America. And whenever they get together for a council, both in the past and in present day, they have a proverb and a way of life looking at that. They say that we need to look 7 generations in the past to see how we did things. And we need to look 7 generations in the future to see how our decisions today are going to affect people hundreds of years from now. And so when we're looking at this, we look at the past and see what happened to places like the RLC, but we need to look into the future and say, 100, 200 years from now, are our decisions going to affect the people that live in Butler or the wildlife that live in the area? So these are big issues to look at. But again, employment and environment are not the only things. We need to look at just the cost effectiveness and the health of the people. If they could get a new water treatment plant built by this water company, the town would do very well. They could save millions of dollars. But if we put too many restrictions on the water bottling company, the town could miss out on this. The plant gets up and walks away and say, no way, that's too much, we can't do it. Well, then the town is left in a very precarious situation where they need to build this more efficient water purification plant, but they don't have the money to do it because nobody has a job. So it's really a cycle and both ways. It can be a cycle towards prosperity or a cycle into depression and poverty. And then we need to look at the health aspect. Austin alluded to that the EPA has been citing the plant many times over because the water quality is not up to the highest standards that they need to be. And it costs a lot of money to fix this. And we assume that the water plant isn't as bad as in other places. Living in Asia, you know that you don't drink the water because it's not processed as well. You need to buy actually bottled water or have a very good filtration system. But in America, people generally rely on drinking the tap water. And around the world, we've seen statistics that 8 million people die from diarrheal diseases every year. And the World Health Organization says that 94% of the time, these cases are completely preventable. So we don't know how much the people's health is being affected by the unsanitary conditions in the local water. We've seen examples in Flint, Michigan, where they had lead contamination and it caused severe mental and health issues, especially in the younger child population of the entire area for generations. So these are really big things to look at. Or do we want to poison our own people because we don't have the money to fix this? So although the current water treatment plant may be better than what people in other countries have, it's very clearly true that having a new plant would undoubtedly improve the health of these local residents' lives. So now that we've looked at all the issues, we need to start looking at the different perspectives and see how we go about approaching this. And so Caitlin is going to go ahead and take over from here.
Thanks, Andrew. So through all of this, through all the background information that we have, the statistics, we can look throughout this through different perspectives, whether it's biblical or through a Christian perspective, or through the perspective of the community, or through the perspective of the bottling company. So through these perspectives, we are kind of able to come up with solutions, and the entire case study that we read showed each of these perspectives very clearly. So the first one is the biblical or Christian perspective. So through the Christian perspective, Christians believe that we are given this earth to tend to it and to take care of it. And through scripture, we consistently see where God is giving examples of this beautiful creation that he has made, that is the earth, how the earth has character through him. And we see this in Psalms 104, we see this in Romans. There's just constant scripture of, here's the reasons why you should take care of your resources, and here's the reasons that we should want to as well. So one of the examples that we see is in Genesis 2:15. It says, "Then the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and to tend to it." And so we see here that God is giving us this responsibility. He's giving man the responsibility to take care of the resources that we've been given of the earth and to care for what we have, because if we would care for him and want to live through him, we would care for part of his creation. And so that is part of the Christian standpoint, that we believe that we are called to take care of the land that has been given to us by God, that if we take care of that, if we are good stewards of our resources, then we will be living for him and in a better way, that we can serve his kingdom by taking care of the resources that we have. And so part of that perspective is that we want to make sure that the bottling company is taking care of the resources, taking care of the environment, making sure that we are good stewards, that the town of Butler is a good steward to the land and the resources that they have, that they care for the land, the animals, and for their own bodies, for their own well-being, because we are to take care of other human beings from the Christian standpoint. And so in the case study, we see they ask Father Polk for some insight on this. And he gives this great insight that water itself is a gift from God, and that every human being, people deserve to have the right to water in their homes, and in general, they deserve, it's a natural human right to have water, whether it is free or inexpensive in that way. Water is just this thing that humans need, that God has provided for us, and so we should take care of that. And to have the companies deplete that water would completely get rid of that good stewardship that we can do for taking care of our bodies, for others, and for that natural right that we have as human beings to have clean and resourceful water. So that's a little bit of the biblical perspective. The next perspective is that of the bottling company through a professional standpoint. So this is the most professional standpoint that we are going to see through this case study. The bottling company is looking out for itself as a company, but part of their idea as a company is also to take care of people around them. And so the bottling company has many workers that are affected by losing this contract or not being able to build this plant. So the goal of the company that they want to limit, they don't want to be limited. They want to be able people to keep their jobs. And so we see examples of this through Eli and Betty. Through their case, Eli was very excited to get this job. He now has a job at the bottling company, and this provided an income for him. It provided medical insurance that he needed for his wife so that they can live their lives and so they can be healthy. And so we see part of this perspective kind of intertwine a little bit with taking care of ourselves, taking care of others. And so this is where this perspective joins in with the biblical perspective of taking care of other people, making sure we're good stewards of our resources, so that way people can live and they have the right to these things. And so the bottling company, they're trying to keep their people working, but they're also trying to gain that profit that they have. This is giving people jobs in the community. And so now we look at the general perspective. We're looking into how the community sees this. What is their perspective? How does this affect the community? So not only are we thinking about those who work at the plant because this is so major for them to keep their job, but we are also just looking at the perspective of those who need clean water and a healthy environment to live in. And that's a little bit what the environmentalists are talking about. They're talking about not only do the animals need clean water, the fish need clean water, we as humans, we need clean water. In the town of Butler, they need that as well. And so the possibilities that this water plant is affecting the health of those who need those water sources or the plants and animals in that area. And so we know that within the case study, we saw the research of what do water plants do for communities? And we know that they are there, they are taking away so many bacteria that could possibly affect the human body. But they're also possibly putting in things, or there's just stuff with chlorine that is also not good for the human body. So we have this ethical dilemma of what is the plant really doing for us and which side do you view as better? And so another thing that is huge for the communities is the water level. So part of the bottling company, they have their contract for 30 years. And part of that confusion is if that 30 years, they're going to take up too much of that water. And so if the water gets too low, the communities around them will not be able to build houses, or they will not be able to make businesses. And so it does not just affect the water bottle company when the water sources get too low. Andrew gave an example that we've seen in our own time of water just depleting completely from a lake. And so what happens there, it doesn't only affect the water bottle company of not having enough water to bottle anymore, but it affects the people around them. And so through these few perspectives, Leah is going to talk about the solutions that we have through being able to understand where these people are coming from.
Thanks, Caitlin. Few of our proposed solutions, we want to start, first of all, we want to deny the property tax deferment that the bottling plant had proposed, and take those funds and earmark them towards repairing leakages in the delivery system. We also want to keep in mind that Butler is not the only town using water from this treatment plant. So others in the county, surrounding towns, should be contributing to this fund as well. We also want to require the bottling company to implement and fund a conservation committee to kind of keep an eye on the water levels. We want them to project future usage and make sure that there are steps being taken to prevent overuse, overconsumption of the water. And by doing that, by keeping an eye on those water levels, we're protecting species that are unique to the area and preserving water for future generations. The biggest change, or the biggest solution we're proposing, is to overhaul the water rate structure, and most importantly, to reassess that as needs change, ideally every 3 years. Water rate structures are based on classes, residential versus commercial, and my town of my county of Beaufort County in Eastern North Carolina has a similar population to Pendleton County, where Butler is found. And one of the things they do is a base rate for all users, and overages over a certain amount of usage are then charged a higher amount. It can be on an increasing or a decreasing scale, whatever is decided, as long as everything is taken to account to be able to cover the operating costs and everything else that comes into treating water and getting it out of where it needs to be. The other thing that we do locally, which I think would make sense in this particular case, is to charge a little bit of a higher rate, not significantly higher, but pennies on the dollar to some of the towns that are further out. And then that difference in rate being earmarked for repair for the leakage in the delivery system as well. There's also the issue of the elderly on fixed incomes, or the lower income families. An elderly person living by themselves is probably not washing clothes or taking as many showers as perhaps here with a 16-year-old. so they're not using that max amount that's covered under that base amount every month. So credits on the monthly bill can be offered to those families that don't use over the base amount. The other option is to have the bottling company kind of contribute to a fund, kind of in an effort to just show good faith in their efforts. That would be made available to assist low-income families if that were to arise, that they needed somewhere to go for help with their water bills. So that's what we're proposing and hoping is a good solution to this issue at hand.